Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel, and we are now on week number 4 for this season. As you can see the headline here, Clutch, Tennessee takes down bitter rival Florida 27-20. You can learn a bit more about that in the previous episode I did reviewing week number 3. So let's go ahead and look at the top 25. As you can see, this little headline for the section, crushed. Number 5 ranked West Virginia loses a stunner to rival Maryland in College Park. Also learned about that in the previous episode. So number 1 for the coaches, we have LSU. Number 2 is Wisconsin. Number 3 is Arkansas. Number 4 is Tennessee. Number 5 is Ohio State. Number 6 is Michigan. 7th is Texas. UCLA is number 8. Number 9 now is Florida. And give me a second, my leg is itchy. Okay. Number 10 is USC. Now you see they fall from number 1 down to number 10, losing 42-3 to Nebraska. And we'll get to Nebraska in a bit. Number 11 is Virginia Tech. 12th is TCU. 13th is Rutgers. 14th is Florida State. 15th is West Virginia. Yeah, they just dropped 10 spots after losing to an unranked team. Notre Dame is up to 16th now. Oklahoma falls to 17th. Cal falls to 18th. And Boise State falls to 19th. Penn State stays at 20th. 21st is Texas A&M. Now Nebraska, beating the number 1 team in the nation at the time, jumps only 2 spots. That don't make much sense to me, but, you know, coaches are coaches. Number 23 is Hawaii. 24 is Miami. And Georgia jumps back in the top 25, with Auburn falling outside the top 25. And this week we have ourselves the media poll. So, the media thinks LSU should be number 1. Tennessee, on the other hand, should be number 2. Number 3 should be Wisconsin. Ohio State should be number 4. Arkansas should be number 5. Florida should be number 6. UCLA should be number 7. 8th TCU. 9th Notre Dame. I agree with them on this because Notre Dame does have those 2 ranked wins back to back. 10th is Michigan. 11th USC. 12th Virginia Tech. 13th Texas. 14th Florida State. 15th Nebraska. You see the media kind of knows what they're talking about here. Here in ranking teams a bit higher because of them getting big wins. 16th Rutgers. 17th West Virginia. 18th Cal. They agree on Cal and Boise State. They say Oklahoma should be 17th. Not 17th. 20th. 21st Penn State. 22nd Miami. 23rd Maryland. 24th Oklahoma State. And 23rd Hawaii, with Kansas State, Texas A&M, Oregon State, Georgia, Texas Tech, Iowa, McNary Central, USF, and Mickey all receiving votes. Now, I didn't check this out before I recorded the me using McNary Central, where 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. We're 32nd in the media poll. I respect that. And the conference standings for our bottom 10 is what I'm going to be looking at. And this headline is simply the best. There's no denying that the SEC is the best conference in football. And a lot of people might say that's still true nowadays. But I'm not going to talk about the SEC just yet. I'm going to talk about the Sun Belt. Now, yeah, Louisiana Lafayette got a win. But it was against an FCS school, and they barely won. 31-24. Like, seriously. How are you going to expect this conference to actually separate if nobody can beat a top team and you barely beat an FCS team? Hopefully once their conference play fully gets going, this will separate out more. Because seriously, all these bad records and allowing all of these points. I mean, North Texas only played 2 games, so they have the least amount of points given up. Well, that ain't saying much. And number 2 is our good old friend, San Jose State. Ugh. Excuse me on that. I mean, Spartans need to find something to turn things around. They're only scoring they're scoring 15 points per game. And they're also allowing around 450 yards per game. Now, when I made the script, I was looking at their stats from the matchup screen. Maybe they can change things around against Utah State, who's 1-2, and quarterbacks meh, and they're coming off of a big loss to Oklahoma State, so maybe catch them while they're down. Now we're going to the SEC, talking about Auburn. I mean, they start off as a top 25 team, are currently underperforming whatever expectations are placed on them. Yeah, they just got knocked back out of the top 25. Seriously, they were in the top 25, lost to Kansas State, won whatever game they won, which was, don't mind all those checks there, because I just did that to ensure that, well, mainly just to see who else. Yeah, they barely beat USF, and then week 3 they get bounced back out after losing to Mississippi State. So you barely beat a Big East team that's not doing the best. That ain't one of the bigger teams to worry about in the Big East. And you lose 2 games that are very potential. You know? Kansas State, I mean, they're ranking the top 100 in points per game at about 23. Well, actually, right at 23. I think many expected more of the Tigers this year, but they are one of the teams that aren't doing well so far. Now, we're going to travel now to the ACC. I was about to say if I can just guess the correct side that Duke's on. And they are currently... Excuse me. Even though they're only at 1-2 right now, they haven't really gotten anything wrong offensively. Sitting at 17.3 points per game and only having 265 yards per game, they need to get the offense side of the ball moving. Otherwise, it's going to be a long, long season that Duke fans are just going to be waiting for basketball season to come around where they're actually good at. And Duke, in my lifetime, it's always been one of those great basketball schools. Now we're going to travel all the way over to the MAC, and we will talk about Bowling Green. Even though I'm giving them a bit of a... I mean, the Falcons are only averaging 7 points so far in their 2 contests, and they've been averaging under 200 yards per game offensively, which has them being one of the worst teams this season so far. I cut them a little slack with them only having played 2 games, but they could just as easily rise up these rankings, maybe even taking the top spot once the Sun Belt gets figured out. I kind of hope that ain't the case, but then hopefully they can turn things around and get a little better. And the Falcons also need to figure things out defensively, as they've allowed 476.5 yards per game, one of the worst totals in the nation. I mean, they're going against Temple this week, so they could improve that number with, but only the results will tell. And now for our next team, it's another team that's usually on this list this season, BYU. Cougars may be 0-3, but they're a decent 0-3, and had higher expectations, being initially ranked 43rd in the nation at the start of the season. They haven't done anything worthy those expectations, including being demolished by UCLA 1 week after Stanford looked like they would have upset them. Hopefully BYU can pick up a couple wins this season. Otherwise, this season will be a big disappointment for everyone on the team. I mean, you got a quarterback with a 1-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. That's not really going to do you good. And, we're staying in the Mountain West. And the Cowboys are, statistically speaking, one of the worst teams in the nation. Only averaging 10 points per game, having 182 yards per game, and allowing 443 yards per game. They need to get something going for them, because it's looking like it's going to be a winless season for them at this rate. They also allow 2 more turnovers per game than they get, so they need to also control the ball as one of the many things that they need to work on the rest of the year. And now, something that's crazy to talk about for this season is Alabama being in the bottom 10. After starting their year off with a win, and who was that win even against? Because I mainly did the script at work, so I have no clue on who Alabama beat to start week 1. They beat Western Carolina. So they opened up the year with a very easy school in Western Carolina. And after starting the year off with a win, when the Crimson Tide have taken a severe beating the past 2 weeks. First, starting their SEC part of the season with an embarrassing 252-0 loss to McNary Central. Then going on to the next week and being manhandled by Arkansas at home 28-3. If you're a Falcons fan, look away from that score. I'm sorry to give you PTSD on that. They have the worst rushing yards per game average of any team and negative 22.3 rushing yards per game. At least I think that was rushing yards, right? It's either rushing yards or passing yards, one of the two. Yeah, it's rushing. Yeah, they have negative 22.3 yards per game. And that is crazy to think about. You watching this video right now has more rushing yards per game than the Crimson Tide do. And the Tide really need to get rolling if they expect to be a bowl contender this year. And a game against the Georgia Bulldogs team that just got back into the top 25 should be a good way to get some momentum back in Tuscaloosa. Because if not, then Nick Saban's time as Crimson Tide head coach in this universe may end up being as long as Miami Dolphins' tenure. Now we're going to travel to Conference USA here for UCF. As known to team already, the Knights are off to a terrible start, especially offensively. Only scoring 19 points per game, along with having 193 yards per game, is not going to be a recipe for success. And defensively, they're allowing 476 yards per game, going against a Memphis team that's starting to get things together after a loss to Ole Miss. The Knights might want to take some more practice time working on their plays, rather than going to Universal Studios Park and Resort. And for our last team, and like I said, I made the script while I was at work, so I couldn't actually look at all the teams' records and stats. But I put Buffalo in as number 10, and they're mainly because the Bulls are the team to have given Temple their first win of the season, and aren't looking like they'll be in contention for any wins anytime soon. Only scoring 11 points per game and allowing 450 yards per game. They really need a lot of work to be a force to be reckoned with in the MAC, because right now they seem to be at the doormat of the MAC. As with them having given the Owls a win, this may be a long season, and fans might want to started wondering if watching the Bills would be better than watching the Bulls. And real quick, I realize it before I go into the key games, not making the grade, Carter's play is declining, and so is his chances at the Heisman. Well, here's one reason why his play is declining, is the fact that he suffered an injury and is going to be out for 9 weeks. So yeah, kind of hard to win the Heisman when you're injured. But your Heisman hopefuls right now are currently Peyton McMahon with 1,353 all-purpose yards and 28 touchdowns. Dylan Miller, who is 95 for 110 with 1,992 yards, along with 44 carries for 565 yards and 55 total touchdowns. You got Ty Jones having 54 tackles, 49 of them for a loss, 34 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, and 2 touchdowns. Dwayne Thomas has 60 tackles, 53 of them for 53 of them for a loss, 39 sacks, and a forced fumble. And Aaron Johnson, who went up even though his team lost, having so far this season 52 carries for 370 yards and 6 touchdowns, along with 6 catches for 191 yards and another touchdown there. And now, key games of the week. Let me just go ahead and unselect all the games. That way, y'all don't think I'm gonna tamper with the results by playing the games. No, because I want these results to be as legitimate of a simulation as possible. Because we don't need these results to be sanctified by me doing what I was doing the first week. So, key game number 1 is game number 1 of the week, and that is Texas A&M and the University of Miami. This top 25 matchup pits the Aggies of the Big 12 against the Hurricanes of the ACC. Miami is starting to get into a groove as they are undefeated so far and already beat one Big 12 team in Oklahoma and looking to repeat that performance here. Texas A&M, though, is looking to win on the road against this strong Hurricane team. There's definitely going to be a lot of firepower in this game as both teams are inside the top 10 in points. But it could also be a defensive hold as they're also in the top 10 in defensive yards given up. And I believe Miami will win because they have more firepower than the Aggies, and it may just look like the U is back in business. For some of y'all that don't know, the U is basically what Miami was known back in the 80s all the way up to like the 2000s. And key game number 2, I was kind of thinking of Rice versus Texas, but stat-wise, and no need. But we have Tampa Bay against West Virginia. Tampa Bay goes on the road to Morgantown and try to upset the Mountaineers after they just got upset on the road against Maryland. The Lightning are also hoping that the second try of upsetting a team on the road will work this time, as they failed to upset Virginia Tech back in week 1. But West Virginia may use that loss as motivation for this game and not going to try to go on a losing streak, especially in a conference like the Big East, where a few teams may be able to win the conference championship, but one slip up and it can be game over for the championship hopes, and maybe even bowl game hopes. Although I do believe that Tampa Bay will pull it off this time around, as their offensive firepower that's got them ranked 4th in yards per game will be too much for this Mountaineers defense. Now, the next one We gotta include our 5th-ranked team in Ohio State going against Northwestern. The Buckeyes are the new 5th-ranked team and hoping to ensure that the curse ends with them winning. But the Wildcats have other ideas, as they are also undefeated heading into this one, and could have huge Big Ten championship implications, as Ohio State wants to win the conference, but Northwestern has just as much of a chance right now. I do believe that Northwestern will pull off maybe the biggest upset of the year so far, going into Columbus, into the Horseshoe, in front of over 100,000 screaming Buckeyes fans, and have them walk away in shock. I mean, you look at the stats though, I mean, they could pass ball on more, but anything can happen in sports, really. I can't just say in college football, because sports in general. Well, let's kind of think of this game between Iowa, Wisconsin, more Big Ten implications. Kind of thinking this game also between Syracuse and Louisville's starting to turn things around a bit after the big loss to McNary Central. I mean, heck, they're still the second worst defense in the league. No, it's the third worst defense in the nation, with them being one of the worst offenses in the nation. They're turning things around. No, we're looking at week 5 now. We don't need to be doing that just yet. I was kind of thinking maybe this Kentucky-Arkansas game, but I settled on this Penn State-Michigan game, as two teams that have fallen to Notre Dame go head-to-head in Ann Arbor at the Big House. This matchup can easily be the difference between one of these teams winning the Big Ten Championship at the end of the year, so you know they're going to play their hearts out. The Wolverines are coming off a loss to the Fighting Irish and haven't recovered just yet, while the Nittany Lions did have a bounce-back win, so they do have a little momentum heading in here. It's definitely going to be a close battle between these two teams, as neither one wants to have 2 losses this early in the season, because then you're kissing your championship hopes goodbye. I say Michigan will win and improve to 3-1 on the year and keep their hopes alive for now. And especially with how close they are offensively, statistically speaking. Man, I just cannot say that word this evening. They're just so close to each other that it's hard to tell who's really going to win. So this is really a toss-up right there. I was kind of thinking of putting Notre Dame in for the 3rd straight week, but I was getting tired of putting them in and wanted to spice a little variety up a bit. I mean, I could have talked about the number 1 team in the nation. I could have talked about USC, but they're probably just going to get a bounce back win against Washington State. That's an easy win. UCF could probably pull off a big upset here against Memphis. I could have done Maryland and Mickey, but this doesn't have the recognition as the other series did, with Mickey facing Maryland for the first time this season on this universe. Got the Textile Bowl, I could have done that. Could have done another Temple game. Undefeated Big 12 matchup. But I settled on Georgia and Alabama. These two SEC teams have gone in completely different directions since week 1. After the Bulldogs got humiliated in week 1 against Oklahoma State, I can tell their defense is still recovering from that. They have won 2 straight, including beating rival South Carolina. The Crimson Tide, however, have lost their last 2 games by a combined score of 280-3. Alabama is shaken up to the core right now, as these 2 big losses will affect the team's morale and motivation. Georgia's on a roll, looking a lot better than they did week 1, and I believe they'll continue their streak. Georgia is definitely motivated by being back inside the top 25, and they're looking to continue their winning ways and stay there. Alabama's hoping for the upset to bring them back down to earth, but I just don't see that happening even with this being at home in Tuscaloosa. So those are the key games. A couple I'm probably considering was the Florida and Ole Miss game, even though it looks like Florida could just win that one easily. Maybe this game right here I could have considered for just to get some bottom 10 teams recognition. Maybe this game just to get TCU involved again. You know, a couple of options. I mean, I'd like to talk about Hawaii, but they just haven't really faced anybody that's can make a good matchup. And that's it for this week. And I will see you all next time.